All right, so this is a School of Data week, sorry, an NYC School of Data event for Open Data Week. And we're calling it Building a Community Data Set of NYC Capital Projects. My name is Rico. I'm a colleague of the presenter, Chris Wong. He and I both work at a company called Query, which will come up a little bit over the course of the conversation, so disclosure that we work there. I'll let Chris introduce the scope of today's presentation, the project that inspired it. But I just wanted to say in general, thank you for being a part of this week. This is our team and company's favorite week of the year. A lot of the tools we build are open source and meant for improving open data. So we care quite a bit about this week and the programming and people's participation. So I just want to say we're very grateful for all of you spending your time, which surely is something that's precious to all of you, given that there's a lot of other things you can do with your evening. So we're very grateful for that. Anything you want to add to that, Chris? I think we could talk a little bit about the format, but I think that is sort of part of your kickoff anyway, so I can turn it over to you.
Okay, I'll just jump in and first say thank you for coming. And basically, as Rico said, we're going to talk about this project, which has been an ongoing sort of not terribly focused effort to build a spatial data set of New York City capital projects. So I'm going to give a kind of overview of the capital budget because it's pretty complex, the kind of all the different nomenclature and abbreviations and names of different things and the cycle that it comes out on. A look at existing information and resources available for the capital budget. We're going to look at our crowd geocoding effort, which we've been running since November, but it's kind of stalled a little bit lately, except for tonight, where we're going to kick it back off, and you all will actually get an opportunity to geocode a few projects if you so desire. So after the presentation, we're actually going to divide and conquer, and you'll be able to take a small list of 5 projects and see if you can help look them up, and that'll actually end up right in the data set, which will be pretty cool. So before I go further, I'll show this map, and I'll drop a link into the chat if you want to check it out on your own as well. But basically, this is kind of the downstream product of what we've got so far, and you'll see in the little information window on the left, this is showing about 2010 projects out of a data set that has about 5,000. So it's definitely not complete, but it is, it's complete, or it's close to complete for a small subset of the data, which is all what we're calling local projects. And I'll explain what that means in a moment. But each of these circles represents one row in the data set of capital projects that are currently ongoing in New York City. And if you hover over them, whoops, sorry. RC of Jesse Owens. Okay, so this is a playground that costs $7.5 million. This one is a cultural arts center that costs $7.8 million. This is a heating and cooling replacement. So lots of different capital projects going on throughout the city. So let's keep rolling. So NYC's capital budget provides funding for construction and rehab of infrastructure such as schools, roads, libraries, and parks. Projects must have either a value of remind me if this is an and or an or, a value of at least 35,000 and a period of usefulness of at least 5 years.
Yeah, earlier in the day when we were talking about this, Chris, you had said it was an and.
Yes, I think that's correct. And then capital budget is funded by proceeds from these various different sources. So this is all on this FAQ page. So I'm definitely no expert on capital budget. This is just kind of something I've studied over the years, and I also worked on it in some semi-official capacity while I was working at the Department of City Planning on the capital budget team a few years ago. So just kind of very interested in where these things happen and how much we spend on them, and we're kind of just scratching the surface of what's possible if we can generate a good spatial data set of these projects. So just so you can get a rough idea of what we're talking about here, this year's capital budget, this fiscal year's capital budget is about $11.8 billion. So it fluctuates over time, but every year, they do a preliminary, and then they do, I think, a couple of rounds of that, and then there's finally the approved budget. Just some nomenclature that you might see inside of capital budget. What you would consider a project is kind of at the bottom of the list. And the capital budget itself, the official document that comes out from the Department of, the Office of Management and Budget, has project types. So that's kind of the top level. So these are like 2-digit or 2-letter codes that describe the very kind of top level of project. So LB means Brooklyn Public Library in the examples I'm citing here. Then there are things called budget lines. So basically the capital budget shows project types and budget lines. And here's a couple examples where these are almost identical, but one is for construction, reconstruction, rehab, improvements, site acquisition, et cetera, for branch libraries in Brooklyn. And the other one is the exact same thing, except that it's council funding, whatever that exactly means. But at the bottom of the hierarchy is projects, and what's important to know about projects is that it can be funded by multiple budget lines, not just one. So you may find a project that actually has is pulling money from like 2 buckets, which is what the budget lines are. So when you actually go to the website to download the capital budget, and I'll show you the website very quickly, but this is this is the New York City government site. Inside here under June 2020 adopted budget, you will see a thing, if you scroll down, that says capital budget. This will download a many 100-page PDF, and it looks like this. So this is one little page, but it kind of looks like a screen dump from a computer system. And each one of these sections is a budget line. So there's a budget line with an ID. So this is HB 1027, for example. So HB stands for highways and bridges. So that's like the top level type, and then a project type, and then, or sorry, what did I call it? It is the, project type. And then this one is for reconstruction of the Harlem River Drive Viaduct from East 127th Street to 2nd Avenue, Manhattan. So that sounds like a project, but it's also a budget line. So maybe there's several projects underneath that. So that's a lot to go over, and like gives you these kind of big high level numbers. But most of these are very, most of these are at the budget line level are, buckets of money. They're not terribly specific about what they're actually going to spend it on, like this one is. So then there's another thing called the Capital Commitment Plan, which is released 4 times a year and includes the actual project level details. So this looks like another sort of set of screen dumps from a computer system. And inside here, we've circled one project, but I think the caveat here is that this is one project, and only the elements of that project that are funded by a specific budget line. So if a project line shows up, if a project is funded by 2, it'll actually show up twice in this document. And this document's 4,000 pages long, and is actually so large that it's published in 4 sections. So I'm going to go back to this website just to show very quickly that if we scroll down to Capital Commitment Plan and click on it, you will see that it's actually published in 4 volumes because it's so big. So each one of these is a PDF. So if you wanted to search for a project, you'd have to like download all 4 of these, open them up, and Command F or Control F. And I think some people who work in government do this from time to time in order to find details about a project. So that's how things had been for the last little while. And when I left city government, this was kind of all we had to work with, versus anything else we could like beg, borrow, and steal from other agencies or negotiate getting our hands on. But this is the official public record of, the only official public record of how we spend our capital money. That's official and detailed enough. But in the last few years, there's a thing, another sort of publication that's come out called Capital Project Detail Data, which is wonderful. So this is kind of another set of PDFs on top of the original ones, but these are divided by borough instead of just being 4 arbitrary, not arbitrary, but 4 chunks that are released in order. Basically they've made a nicer presentation for this information. So we have 1 page for each project. So here's basically the same one that was listed here in this screen dump that was kind of a little hard to read for Carroll Gardens HVAC replacement. Is now shown here. So this is the same project. You can see project ID is a nice little alphanumeric code, LBM 13CGHC. But this has lots of goodies in it, and it's much better formatted. So we can see the 2 budget lines that fund this. So here are the 2 budget lines. We can see the original budget, and this is in thousands. So this is a $1.1 million project. Then we can see what's actually planned at this point. So, what's been spent already and what's planned. So for this original budget of 1.1 million, we've already spent 1 million, and we're planning in fiscal year 22 to spend another 3 million. So I don't know much about the details of this project, but it's now, the total, if you combine what has already been spent with what is planned to be spent is about $4 million, which is very much different than the original budget. So, you know, I won't opine on why that is, but those two numbers are very different. So we should maybe check that out. So this is great. And when we discovered this, I discovered this last fall, I was like, oh, we've got to have this data. So we ended up scraping it, which is wonderful. And it also has this community board served field. And I think there's actually at least in the ones that were published last fall, a big typo or big error in them where I think they reversed Bronx and Brooklyn because this is supposed to be 306 instead of 206. But we fixed that in our data. So we end up scraping it, even though there is a data set available on New York City Open Data for this now. And actually revisiting it a few months later, it actually looks like they've improved that data set because the first time we looked at it last fall, it actually didn't have a lot of the fields that were contained in the PDF. So as part of kind of revisiting it before this presentation, I realized that they have improved the data set. So I'm going to show at this point kind of what it looks like. So this is capital project detail data $, which is on the New York City Open Data Portal. And just so you can see, you know, each one of these is a capital project, and you can see the project IDs here. You can see this is the community boards field, which I think is called community board. And, you know, you can scroll all the way across, and here's all those numbers for what was actually spent, what, you know, this is the original budget amount, et cetera. So we also have our version of it, which is on query.cloud, which is what we scraped. So someday I would love to compare these two and see if they actually jive, which they should, because they're in theory pulling from the same source. Anyway, you can use either one of them at this point, and I would love to combine the efforts at some point and just, you know, basically check and see if the city's official one is worth using at this point. It seems like it is, which is exciting. So getting the data, I mean, basically this is like a little table that if you group everything by its borough and then sum the combined total and the prior actuals and the planned spending, this is what you end up with. So 36 billion of already spent plus planned spending for citywide projects, and then the rest of them fall into a borough. So that's an important distinction because they actually do distinguish between what is considered a citywide project, which I guess means it would have citywide benefits versus borough benefits. Then there's this concept of local. So there is a community board served field, and it's not filled out for everything. So there are some projects that are assigned to the borough of Brooklyn or the borough of the Bronx, but do not have community boards listed, which we would consider borough-wide. So the ones that do have community boards listed may have one or more, and that's basically saying, you know, these communities will benefit at least directly from this project. So you may sign, like in Brooklyn, for example, many of the ones that are in Prospect Park list all of the community boards that are surrounding Prospect Park. So I haven't done a whole lot of research into like how accurate that is, but at least it's there and it's something to work with. So this is just a quick breakdown of what we're calling local versus borough-wide for all the non-city projects in the data set. So you can see kind of the spread is a little bit different across the different boroughs in terms of actual funding amounts. So on top of that, did we miss a important? No, we didn't. Okay. On top of that, because we have this community board served field, we were able to kind of do some simple mapping. So we don't have like discrete geometries for these things yet, but using those fields, we know where community boards are or community districts are, so we can actually combine them and do some aggregations. So this was just sort of a, taking the what they call the 10-year capital plan category for each one of these projects and just grouping, like aggregating the data or aggregating the total spend by community district yields these little small multiples maps, we call these. So each one of these, shows a different category and sort of where the spending for that category is listed as happening, or at least listed as supporting in the data set. So there's actually a much longer version of this that has many more of these. So this is just kind of the top chunk of it that would fit on a slide. But I encourage you to go check out the blog post that we wrote on this last fall. And you'll notice that things like this one, which says neighborhood parks and playgrounds, kind of has coverage all over the city because those are everywhere. And then there's some that are, much more specific to to some other kind of work that are only happening in a few places or one place, which is mildly interesting, but I don't, I would encourage you to go check it out. Each one of these could be its own little research project because there's so much going on here, but interesting way to check out the data. So moving on, like we want to go below community district level, and the old saying is everything happens somewhere. So the task at hand is assigning geometries to these projects. Interestingly, this is not the first time that this has been approached, and I've seen like Councilmember Brad Lander, for example, actually has a web map of capital projects on his website, and that's the work of his staffers or somebody in his office that's actually pulled out all of the projects that are relevant to his district, geocoded them, added additional information, and made like a nice web interface for them, which is wonderful, but it doesn't apply to the whole city. There's also, there were efforts while I was in city government to do the same thing, but they never really saw the light of day, which is why we have to do this again on the outside as a community project. So, there's a lot of different efforts to try and figure out, how we can add a spatial component to these capital projects. So can we assign point geometries to them? Well, we can try. So there's 5,000 of these things, but if I just look at the local projects, so the ones that list, for example, Community District 6 in Brooklyn, which is where I live, I would say, it ends up being just a few dozen. So it's not that bad. So I can sit down for an hour and a half and actually, read the project descriptions and try and locate each one of these things. So this map comes with a huge asterisk because a lot of these are, sewer projects that cover very large swaths of space, but with the caveat that we just want to have some notion of where it's happening with a single point geometry. This is kind of a best effort of doing that, and gives you this very interesting picture of where the big ones are, where the little ones are. And you can see, there's things here like William Penn Playground renovation, $800,000. There's things that are in the middle, like Red Hook ball fields, $15 million for a ball field project. There's the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal, $3.5 million. Then there's big ones like this one, which I believe is a sewer or some kind of water project, which is reconstruction of Columbia Street area, phase 2. So lots of codes in here, lots of little interesting tidbits, lots of interesting stuff in Prospect Park, like rebuilding of a carousel, reconstruction of the carousel, reconstruction of the picnic house, things like that. So most, all these Prospect Park ones also listed Brooklyn CD6, but they also listed probably all the surrounding districts as well. So we have a little bit of overlap between districts that may show up here.
Chris, just, I think you're going to kind of get to this, but I don't want to skip. I've been tracking everybody's questions, so I promise I will ask yours. There's one that felt a little bit relevant to the map you just showed, which is from Jim, and were these manually annotated was Jim's question.
No, like sorry, it depends on what you mean by annotated. These were manually geocoded, so I just had to choose what I thought was the best point to place the marker. But the actual names, the actual text that you see on the screen here is pulled straight from the data set. So it's what's officially in the in those PDFs as a project description.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, great. Now do the whole city. Okay, so we have 5,000 of these projects. I'm going to need some help. So if you know me, I'm on Twitter a lot, but this is me saying, hey, I need volunteers to manually look at projects to add lat-long coordinates. Pretty straightforward. If interested, I'll assign you a community district, and each has several dozen, should take a couple of hours. Who wants to help? So I just kind of fired this off and said, it'd be neat if a few people jump in and help me out with this. I don't really know how I'll manage it, but I'll figure it out. And people started responding and saying, hey, I'll do it. And this person, Dante Lee, I love his name, Twitter name, this guy Maps. He jumped in, and I think he did more than one actually. And there's, basically people were just excited, and they were like, hey, I finished up this district that you assigned me. And I'll be like, okay, you want to do one more? And they're like, sure. So a bunch of people were repeat helpers that did a lot of these. And basically we've gotten up to about 2,000 now, which is very close to complete of the just the local projects. So keeping things organized, we use an Airtable. So if you jump into the Airtable, you can actually, yeah, basically I create a view on the sidebar. So, BK01, BK02, BK03, I would give someone a community district, and then they can click on this and have just their list of projects that they're responsible for. And then all they have to do here is go in and like look at the scope summary, look at the description, see if they can find it on Google Maps, and then drop a lat long in here. So we're good to go.
Cool. I've got another question that might be skipping ahead, but was all this mapped in ArcGIS? How did you map the sewer lines against funding, especially since they may run across so many different areas? And I think you might have covered this, but not covered it, but you could have, whatever. How would you answer that question?
Yeah, it's not that sophisticated. So I think it's much more just trying to find the general area. And in fact, there actually are, actually, that's not entirely true either. There are, I glossed over a big chunk where we did programmatically geocode a bunch of these by using existing data set. There's an existing data set for some capital projects that is published by Do It that's on a web map. And I pulled those down and got centroids for those. And that was, I think, a few hundred projects that were just kind of bulk geocoded that way. But most of these were done by the community. So by our powers combined, so basically like what we're doing here is on the right, which is this lookup table. So it's geometries for each project provided by volunteers. And then we join by project ID to the official data. And together, those two things together make a spatial data set. It's obviously not perfect and it's obviously not complete, but we've made a lot of headway and we're trending towards a complete data set. Rico, I don't know if we can clear the screen, but there seems to be like writing on the screen.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I don't see it in the deck.
Okay, interesting.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, let's present. All right. So where were we? Data archival, query.cloud.
Hey, Chris, let me try and share my screen and see if it resets or something.
Okay.
Or yeah. Try now.
Okay. All right, can you see my screen? No, not yet.
Not yet. Oh, it's coming.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Airtable, basically is a place where anybody who gets, who I give a link to that can edit, could, like, they're kind of on the honor system to go in and like do only the section that I assign them to. But it's kind of changing all the time. So we kind of have this like situation where we don't really know who changed what when, and it could be total chaos. So every now and then I will actually archive it in query. This is what our company does, is have this information, this data platform that also is a version control system. So by running a little script locally on my machine, I can pull down the data set as it exists at any given moment on Airtable with a little node script, and then make a commit of that data set to a query data set, and then push that up to Query Cloud. So I just run that command whenever I need to, and that gives me a new sort of snapshot of that data that is also published so people can download it. So if you go to query.cloud and you see this capital projects data set, you can actually see when that commit was made and when it was updated, and trust it a little bit more because you know exactly what happened, and you can see the version history, which is wonderful. So we're using our own product for this, which is great, but like fits kind of well into Airtable as my editor and Query as my kind of archival site where I can kind of store the data and trust that it won't be moved around or modified because it's an immutable version. So what's great is that now that I've shown you that we have this sort of script that runs somewhere else, it's a good time to introduce where we're headed at Query with dataset automation. So this is a slide that kind of shows our dream of datasets that update themselves. And what that really means is that there's a script that doesn't live somewhere else and run somewhere else, but actually lives with the dataset. And I mean that in a true sense that it's actually versioned along with the data, so that if the data changes or the script changes, it becomes a new version. But basically what that means is you can have data sets that can sort of reach out on a schedule or on command and pull down source data to make a new version of themselves. And that's kind of the way we've structured things at Query. So in addition to that, data sets can be based on another data set. So as long as the source is in Query, it becomes very easy to say, anytime this bulk data set is updated, these ones are all listening for that event and can pull down the bulk data to update themselves. So what that would look like for this particular project is that we pull down data from Airtable into this FY 2021 capital projects detailed data set. And then there's 3 different users that want to consume that bulk data. And this person may want to join it with neighborhoods. This person may want to filter it for Brooklyn, and this person may want to join it with demographic data. So each one of those processes in the sort of normal data analysis world would have happened, inside of a Jupyter notebook or in a script somewhere running on their machine. So what we're trying to do is like elevate these sort of common data practices to a place where they can be, shared, trusted, and archived. And then basically from there those derivative data sets may be useful to other people as well. So that's kind of the world we want to live in. You may have heard of us refer to this as the data commons in previous presentations, but that's kind of where we're headed.
Chris, I'll pause you right there. If you want to go back to the previous screen, I was going to wait to introduce these 2 questions because they kind of fit this a similar theme with each other. And I think the answer kind of comes from the fact that this could exist on data commons, and this is just a starting point data set from which this can spring into a million directions. But one of the questions was, I also wonder if there's a way to see which projects use participatory budget process. So you could imagine someone, adapting the data set and either adding a column to tag that. And then a second question, is there a way of telling if a project is completed? I look at local projects on a map and know where some are finished in X year or X fiscal year, some in process and others not yet started. I know this firsthand, but cannot tell if I only look at the info on your map. Maybe add something to that, like time period.
Sure. So yeah, I think a big thing to know is that projects come in and projects fall off. As far as I know, anyway, like basically anything that's in there now, is planned to happen or is ongoing. And when it ends, like when it gets finished, it actually disappears, which means to really get a good picture of what's happened it's a kind of a long time span that you have to be looking at. And wherever you start looking, there's still going to be projects that, were began prior to that date. So it's a much bigger task. So really like that's a huge asterisk too, that like everything that's on this map is what existed in the data set last fall. And it's going to change, it's already changing, this year, and it will, every time the new budget comes out, there will be brand new projects, and there will be some projects that probably disappear. So that it gives, even if we were to complete this this current iteration of geocoding data set, geocoding projects, there's going to be a handful more that come into existence next year that we have to continue this work. So you're never done. Or as they say, like software is done like the dishes are done. Data sets are also done like the dishes are done, which means you'll be doing them again very soon. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's great. The comment just came up kind of in the same theme. Are you pairing projects to specific bonds in light of being tied to specific financial investments?
No, not that I'm aware of. So the only thing that's in the data set is city funding versus non-city funding. So I think that's as good as it gets unless somebody has a more detailed information sources for each of these. I think there are ways to find out more details about where the money's coming from, and I think in general there's like a lot of other things we could attach to these, like news articles, like pictures, which would be wonderful if like people could just go out and take pictures of these capital projects. So that's sort of another eventual goal of this website if anyone's interested in it. So yeah, my vision for this website is that it becomes like a the source of all this information coming together, whatever people can contribute, is like I would love to be able to click on this the carousel and Prospect Park project and be able to see a link to the contract, star rating for the contractor, a bunch of local news articles about how people are enjoying it or how they're inconvenienced by the construction or whatever it is. So there's just all of these things kind of have different footprints around the community, and there's lots of information artifacts that we could kind of put together for each one of these things. So this map is it's open source, so if you want to help out, it's on GitHub. We basically rebuild it, so it's a static site. There's no backend to it. So it just basically every time we update that query data set, I can just go to the website that's hosting this and just say rebuild, and it'll just go grab the latest from query and then put the website together. So we actually do that at the end of this session once we've added some new projects. So to give you an idea of where we're at, this is kind of cool because we started with like the handful that I geocoded personally back in like November. So we had like 80 or 60 or 80 or something done at that point. After a bunch of people helped out on Twitter and just volunteered, we were able to get up to about 2010. So we've actually mapped 91% of the projects that have local reach because they have a community board mentioned, which is 39% of the entire data set, which is pretty awesome. So I think the next goal, once I need to go through and actually figure out why we only have 91% when we've in theory touched every community board. And I think there's just a lot of projects that just can't be geocoded for whatever reason, because they're for things like vehicles, or they're for things like computer systems and things like that. And then I think the next step is to actually do the borough-wide ones, because many of those can be mapped to a discrete location. We just need to make sure we're clear that they're considered borough-wide and not with local impact, but they should still be mapped. So I think that's where we're going to start next. So I don't know. I would love to take. I don't know. Maybe we can do a few more questions because we've got plenty of time. But the exercise. Yeah, what we're gonna.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh yeah, what we're gonna do after this round of questions is basically split up the remaining, not split up the remaining work, but like give you an opportunity to actually do some of this geocoding, where you can basically claim 5 projects for yourself right now, and we'll break for like 15 or 20 minutes and let you actually go try and look them up and add a lat long to the Airtable. So this will be kind of fun, and by all means, stick around and help out, and your contribution tonight will actually end up right in the data set. And then after we're done, we'll rebuild the website, and you'll be able to like take that link and show it to your friends and say, look, I actually helped, put some of these on the map. So that'll be totally fun. Any other questions I guess I can answer?
Perfect. Yeah. So this will naturally, this question was asked a couple of minutes ago, but naturally feeds after this exercise, which is the data verified in any way once it's geocoded?
No, so that's another big caveat. I think we have a lessons learned slide at the end of this that would actually list that. But yeah, QA/QC is a problem. There's no real verification. So I think what I would love to be able to do is have the website be a place where you can just flag something and it'll just go into another Airtable somewhere as like somebody said that this isn't right, or maybe you can leave a comment for it. But yeah, like it's come up where somebody forgot to put a negative on their longitude, and it ends up, if you draw a line of latitude eastward to the opposite longitude, you end up in Uzbekistan. So we had a couple point geometries in Uzbekistan for a while until those got fixed. But yeah, I know some of these are in the wrong place, and I've already heard complaints on some of them, especially like the sewer projects. But I think it's a best effort, and we have to come up with some kind of plan for feedback on this. And actually, in the meantime, the issue queue on Query Cloud is actually a great place to start. So you can leave a message there just like you would on like GitHub, and we can use that as a place to track those kinds of issues.
Great. So I know I'm going out of order, so please don't get frustrated in the comments if I've skipped your question. There's a thematic reason why I might be asking the next question next. But since you're contributing back, the question asks, are your contributions linked to your GitHub profile, i.e. being able to see what other data sets a person has contributed to? So you kind of just touched off this, but I thought it'd be worth explicitly asking that question.
No, I mean, at this point, there's no, the contribution is just literally writing lines in an Airtable. So best I can do is actually add your name to the README on Query Cloud, which I've done for those who have participated so far. But it's not as fine grained as that. It's something we'd love to build in Query, where you could like contribute one row to something and have it be associated with your identity. But that's not something we have in place at this point.
And then in the spirit of, data sets that evolve and generate new versions as people contribute to them or as they change over time, one of the questions is, are you trying to save the data points that have been removed from the original data set because they've been canceled or completed?
So I haven't gotten that far yet, but I would say yes. If this thing survives into the next budget cycle, absolutely. There's no reason, because we're basically building a lookup table of geometries, so it doesn't really concern itself with the official list of like current projects. So yeah, there's no reason to ever remove a geometry from the lookup table or from the table of geometries, because that becomes like even when that project is finished, I think that geometry is still relevant to know where it happened. So the work would have to be in creating some broader data set of all projects that have ever existed versus the ones that are currently in the budget and ongoing.
Cool. Great. So I've done my best to comb through the comments and ask your questions for you, but if you thought I didn't do a great job, or you kind of want to put some of your own emphasis on it, please feel free to unmute or raise your hand. I can call on you, and then we can dedicate a couple minutes to getting your question asked the way you wanted it to be asked. Just let me know. And in the meantime, Chris, whatever you need to do to set up the exercise.
Nope, that's it. So here, let me share this. Only people added can open this link. Change link to create. Change link to anyone. Okay. Risky business here.
Oh, you got viewer, yeah.
Sorry?
I think the rights were set to view it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So again, Chris can cut me off, but while he's speaking, I'll just say, yeah, I think if you want to participate, this will be your chance to just claim a letter by putting your name in column B, and in column A will tell you what letter you've got, and that'll help us. So each letter has about 5 projects associated with it. And once you get the Google Sheet link in the chat that Chris sends, put your name beside one of those letters. We'll then route you to the Airtable, which will tell you which 5 projects we'll ask you to contribute to. And essentially, Chris can cut me off, but essentially we'll say, if you've got project E, these are the 5 projects associated with batch E. And all we'll be asking for you to do is do whatever sleuthing you can to try and get, basically Googling. Anybody who's got the ability to Google will be able to contribute in a meaningful way to this exercise, but you'll be Googling those 5 projects, trying to find a lat long for it, plug it in the Airtable, and then we'll rerun the script to regenerate the map. So we kind of see this evolve in real time. Chris, let me know if any of that is not accurate.
No, that's fine. So once you've claimed one of your letters, if you drop into the Airtable, you'll see on the sidebar here, there's all these community districts, but at the bottom of the list, there's Open Data Week A, Open Data Week B. So if I were to click on Open Data, whoever's claimed A, this is what you're going to end up with. This one says Coney Island signs. So who knows what that is, but at least we know it's in Coney Island somewhere. So unless you can figure out more about this project based on what you read here, try and do your best effort, and then basically drop a lat long into this latitude and longitude column as best you can. And remember, your latitude should be somewhere in the 42 range, and your longitude should be -74 or something. If you're not getting one of those, you're probably not in New York City. But yeah, that's basically what we're doing here. So take the next 15 minutes to drop in here. If you have questions, throw them in the chat. And we'll see how far we can get. And once we're done, I'll run my script that'll like push this up to the query data set, and then we'll update the map as soon as we're done. So we're going to do this for about 15 minutes.
And this will be obvious if you're in the Google Sheet now, but there's a link to the Airtable in row 4. So once you've claimed your letter, you can jump right in and figure out whether the project's associated with your letter. And feel free to use the chat to troubleshoot, ask any questions, ask for advice, seek help. You know, we're doing this virtually, but we ought to pretend as much as we can as if we're in a big classroom together, where we can come over and help you answer your questions. I'm sorry, I missed how I find my batch in the website. Okay, so this is for Deborah. Deborah has batch D. So Deborah, if you click on that Airtable link.
Yeah, over here on the left, you'll see views, and then if you scroll to the bottom of this list, you'll see Open Data Week D. Right there.
Great,
So
thank you.
Yeah, you get, BNY for example is Brooklyn Navy Yard, FYI. There's lots of little acronyms in here. So if you ever see EC, that means engine company for fire department things. But yeah, if you're stuck on something, yell it out, and maybe somebody here can help out.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
And I'll post a link directly to the Airtable in the chat as well, right there.
Okay, I'm gonna carry you like this.
All right, I'm gonna stalk some people in the Airtable. So let's look at.
Also, if you've been in this chat since the beginning, you'll know that I'm on troll watch. So if you've unmuted yourself to ask a question, and I was a little trigger happy, just go ahead and unmute again and ask your question. But I'm trying to make sure that we don't get Zoom bombed again.
All right, let's Google stalk Brendan, who is the founder and CEO of Query. Let's see how he's doing. Nothing yet, Brendan?
I've gotten some DMs from people asking if they can share this project with other friends or students or allies of theirs, and the answer is absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. The problem is we don't really have, like, obviously my outreach strategy is not great on this, and I would have loved to invite all the people that have contributed, but I don't have a good way to just fire off a message to all of them. So Twitter broadcasts are the best I've got. So I don't know, it's just gonna boil down to either this thing will get stale and we'll forget about it for a few months and maybe come back to it later, or maybe we'll put some more initiative behind it and get organized and have a Discord or something that people can join. For now, the best you can do is land on one of these readmes, either on the data set or on the website, and reach out to me, which is a bad way to set up a project like this, but we'll get there. But yeah, invite more people.
And we have a slide at the very end of the presentation that has links to the map, links to the code for the map, and ways to stay in touch with us. So we will send both the presentation out to anybody who has RSVP'd, and we'll make sure the recording gets in your hands as well. But otherwise, feel free to take a screenshot of that last slide, and you can reach out to us on Twitter or GitHub or Query.
Sure. Taina asked a question in chat. If there's clearly multiple service locations, what are you putting as a lat long? I would say that's your judgment call on if I were looking at a neighborhood sewer, I could try and find a center point for that. But if it's they're spread out all over the place, yeah, if they're spread out across the borough and there's like 20 different locations, then that's an example of one that just can't be geocoded, and I would just not put it on there. We can get into doing multi-points at some point in the future, but like for now, if you can't reasonably describe its general location with 1 point, then I would leave a little note that just says like, I can't do this because. Most of the time it's simpler, and it's like, this is at this firehouse or this library or this park, and that's a much simpler proposition. But if there becomes gray area, then there's gray area, and if it becomes like it's literally, you know, all over the map, then just say you can't map this one. So we'll keep jamming on this until top of the hour. See how far we get. Brendan, looks like you got 2 under your belt. Wonderful. Sharon, to answer your question, geometry source historically for the volunteers who have worked here has just been manually geocoded by Chris Wong or by whatever your name is. But I'm not really fixated on that. I think if you put your name next to it, then that will live on in infamy in the data set. But a link to supporting evidence is just as good.
Pamela came late. Which geometry sources are we using? And this is my cat Omar, says hello back.
Pamela, the geometry source is really what you're doing is manually looking these up. So most people are probably going to Google Maps and just seeing if they can find whatever the thing is, either by address or by description, and then pulling a lat long from Google Maps. And by the way, pro tip, if you go to maps.google.com, anywhere you right click on the map, whoops, that didn't work. Wait till the JavaScript loads, then right click on the map. And if you click on the lat long coordinates, it'll actually copy them to the clipboard for you. So you don't have to like try and select and copy and paste this. You can just click on it. So I'm going to make a new view here. Let's see if I can make a new view. So I will filter it for data week 21 is not empty. And latitude is not empty. So this should show us everything that people have already done tonight. So we have 32 new geometries that did not exist before this evening. You helped. Now we have 34. Look at that. And I see Amanda Doyle is here. I didn't even see her. Hello, Amanda Doyle. Amanda Doyle worked with me at the Department of City Planning on the original capital planning team. And we did this exact same exercise with city planning employees back in like 2018.
Hi, Chris.
Good to see you.
You too.
I see why you can't just make a program to pull the data from Google. People use all sorts of terms for things and it needs to be translated into what we can find. Exactly that. Okay, 5-minute warning. We've got 38 new geometries, and I think In theory, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people, 16 people, 16 times 5. Yeah, should get us 80 new geometries. So now we're at 38. Anyway, don't feel bad if you can't finish. No rush. This is just kind of wanted to get a little hands-on with this and give you some experience. It's fun. Each one of these is like its own little sleuthing problem. And some of these are really fascinating and you just really want to know what's going on there. Or you learn stuff about city government that you didn't know about, facilities that we operate and things like that. It's kind of fascinating.
Oh yeah, and some people are making the comment that some of the lat longs might not necessarily make sense. So we might have touched 80 projects, but not have good lat longs for 80 projects.
Sure.
Thank you, Sharon.
Columbia Street Platform Rehabilitation, new firehouse, Rescue 2. Security upgrades at Pink Houses.
Oh, I have a question. Did you randomly in the A through Z, so 26 Open Data Week segments, Did you randomly bucket these? Are they mostly from Brooklyn? How did you? Just curious to see how if the map changes with a bunch of dots in Staten Island or something like that. We'll know.
This is all Brooklyn. So these are all citywide. These are all borough-wide projects in Brooklyn. So each one of these, if you look at the community board served, they should not have. Well, I guess that's interesting. Yeah, most of them say 300, which just means Brooklyn, because there's no community board 0 or the community district 0. So I think I actually should have filtered it so that it's where there are no explicit community districts, but I didn't. So I think it's just wherever 300 is in there, maybe. So all of these are in Brooklyn. So basically what we're doing tonight is like a start at the borough-wide projects for Brooklyn. And look, we're at 47 now. You see, this is progress right before your eyes. And let's, I'm gonna like roughly QC these latitudes and longitudes, make sure I don't see any like blatantly errant numbers. Okay, 2-minute warning.
Do you get a prize if you finish? Cindy wants to know.
You get the pride of contributing to a civic project, and like I said, your name will live in infamy in the data set, which is versioned and immutable. So even if somebody comes along and changes your geometry later, the version of the data set that you will be in is forever enshrined on Query Cloud.
I'll think of something.
Okay, we're close to the hour, so I'll say pencils down at the stroke of 8 o'clock. So if you're not done, don't worry about it. We can follow up later, but we need to move on so we can get this thing pushed. So I'm actually going to run the script right before your eyes, but we will. It won't look like much on the terminal, but you'll see a new version emerge, and then we'll redeploy the website. And I'd love to hear just from anyone that found something fascinating in their travels through this data set, because there's always little nuggets of interesting things going on around New York City.
I got a question that came in under the wire. So I have a Brooklyn College lecture hall, but can't find the exact coordinates of the lecture hall specifically. Should I put Brooklyn College?
Sure, yes. I would just leave that there, and then somebody else can come along and improve that later on.
I think people's right clicks are breaking.
Okay, 8 o'clock.
Good
So
time to stop.
get your last minute copies and pastes in, and we'll, if you want to follow up with something later, you can. So what I'm going to do right now is say node Airtable sync.js, and what you will see before your eyes is it's going to hit Airtable's API, pull down the data. Here we go, live demo. There we go. It now saved it to a file on my computer. It did a commit to a query dataset called NYC Capital Project Detailed Data Geom, and then it pushed it to Query Cloud. Did it push it? Yes, it did. Okay, and let's go check it out on query.cloud, and you will see this is Capital Project Detailed Data. Let's go to see the Geom data. It's this guy right here, and it says pushed a minute ago, which actually should say less than a minute ago, but I think that's as low as it goes. And we have 26 versions of this data set. So if you click on the history tab here, you'll see that this is the one we just did tonight. And then 8 hours ago, there was another one where I updated the README. And then the other ones have happened over the, I guess there was a big gap from about 2 months ago. Yeah, your contributions, if you made some tonight, are now versioned in this data set, which is wonderful. And I can actually go to Netlify, and I'm going to redeploy the website. And while I'm doing that, actually, I would love to hear if anyone had any very interesting things they discovered. Would love to share with the group.
Relatedly, I actually skipped over a question that was asked near the top to you, Chris, which is, was there anything that surprised you in this map that you found or that you learned throughout the process?
I mean, there's
maybe you can answer your own question by starting off.
I mean, I think just the sheer, like the amount, like the sheer amounts on things, like $15 million ballpark renovations. Like I know things cost money, but like some of them are just very shocking. And you just look at like, oh, security camera upgrade for a housing project is, can be millions of dollars. And, like there's also tons of just different like IT related things that are just extremely expensive. So yeah, I would say that's probably just trying to understand that like each one of these raises so many more questions, I guess, when you start looking at it, and then you start Googling and you start finding like information. I will also say that there's a capital project going on my street right now where they're lining the sewer with concrete. So capital projects came to my, to my front door, or to my street at least. And it was kind of neat to find that in the data set. It's a citywide project to do sewer renovations. But that was like kind of neat to see it out front. Somebody on my block got a hold of like, I guess, yeah, I'm trying to remember how I actually connected what they were doing to a project ID. And I think they found a document with the company name on it after talking to the workers, shared it with my block email group. And then inside that document was a project ID. And I was like, oh, that's in the data. That's so cool. So yeah, that's one story.
Chris, sorry, I've tried a couple times to paste the map, and I'm sure you have got the best URL for it. So if you want to
Sure.
trump the ones that I've posted. So for everybody who's trying to click my links, I apologize.
Yeah, sorry, I changed the name of this yesterday, so it would be more attractive.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Mine's
it's actually redeploying right now, and it takes about 5 minutes sometimes, so that'll run. Does anyone, if no one else has anything to share, I actually we want to give Brendan a chance to show off a derivative work that he's worked on to kind of show that the downstream value of this data set that you can use it to aggregate and do other things. So any other comments or anything people want to share from what they learned just in the last few minutes of geocoding?
And if you don't have them at the tip of your tongue, you can put the word stack in the chat, or drop them in the chat, and just like how we have been doing, I can make sure they get read and answered.
All right.
Yeah, we'll turn it over to Brendan. Yeah.
Mind if I take the baton for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Thanks so much. And Chris, this is great. And we just wanted to quickly cover sort of what we talked about a little bit with this idea of having data sets that are derived from this. So tonight we sort of want to show how when you do work like this and really sort of work hard to manually hand geocode something, we really want to get into a system where the contribution you made can go ideally even farther. And so by using this sort of downstream data set, I'm going to play the role of this spatial join with neighborhoods downstream data set and quickly show when Chris pushed that new version to Query Cloud, I have a script that is dependent on that script and knew that, oh, cool, Chris had that thing and it automatically ran, and we had a new data set that updated a few seconds ago that is my work, which is taking all of the geocoding that everybody just did and aggregating it for zip codes within New York City. And so we've got that. The nice thing here is anytime that source data set updates, we get this other one here, and you can download this for free right now. So if while you were thinking about this, you're like, oh, it'd be cool to see this by zip code, A, congratulations for having the exact same thought as me, but also B, you can have that same data set as a result of your contribution tonight. We went from 1900 to 2005 projects that match the zip code within New York City. And what some of the things that are kind of exciting about this data set is it takes the geocoded set and combines it with the number of residents in each zip code. And so you can start to get closer to analysis of how many people are being served by a budget. With every asterisk under the sun, we wouldn't in any way call this conclusive, A, because we haven't had a chance to vet the original data set and the data set isn't yet complete. But as we increase the completion of this, it gets more and more interesting. And just to sort of show what that looks like, you can actually take that entire thing, and I've taken the liberty of putting it on a map. And now you can see each zip code, and the size of each bubble is determined by the total combined budget for that zip code. If you go into the actual data set, the combined budget combines both city contributed data and externally agreed upon, or city contributed funds and externally agreed upon funds. I've also I'm not totally confident in this number yet, but we do have the budget per resident calculated, which is basically just the population of that zip code from the 2015 census, combined with the total, or that divided by the overall budget line. Yeah, and so I think that's really what we wanted to show. If you want to peek under the hood of how we're building this, I just wanted to quickly preview what that looks like. I apologize for showing you code on screen if you're not a programmer. The whole idea is if you don't program, you don't have to look at this, you can just download the data. But this is what we mean when we say declaring data set dependencies and having data sets that are sort of built on top of each other. And so what you're looking at is a tool that we'll be sort of putting out, and then we're actively beta testing on our own Discord. This is an open source project that you can run locally as well. And here I'm actually importing the Beta NYC's population from 2015, which is a data set that I made to do the neighborhood populations and zip codes. And then the geom data set that everybody is working on. And then there's a whole bunch of GAC that we won't go into, but this is all the magic and all of the code that makes that data set exist. And this is tied to the data set itself. So if you download this data set in this form, it'll give you a zip file, and the code for this is included in that. And so that gives you two things that are helpful. One, you can rerun that code if you want to get the updates yourself. But more importantly, you can audit my work, and you can say, hey, is that actually accurate? And you can sort of find some hidden gems. This data set is heavily reliant upon Beta NYC's fantastic zip code geometries, which is a wonderful data set presented as GeoJSON. So it's just like it's open data all the way down in this presentation. But yeah, we just wanted to show that off. If you want to download this data, again, it's a work in progress. You can also have that for free with an account on Query. That was my only plug. Over to you, Chris.
Awesome, thanks. So I'm going to present last slide. So basically, like lessons learned, outreach and community management are hard, and like to really run this project properly, it would take not really a full-time job, but a lot more infrastructure
Chris,
and resources. Sorry,
we don't see your screen yet.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, boom. Yeah, outreach and community management are hard, and this is like not a core function of Query, but it's definitely something that we're interested in, so we want to support it. But we just need to, if this is going to become more substantial, if we can get the data set more complete, then we shift over to like making the website more complete, where we can start adding in like the things people have been sharing in in the chat, where like there's tons of resources about these capital projects that are not officially in data sets, that are in PDFs and other websites about bidding for contracts and things like that. So compiling all that would be a wonderful thing to crowdsource. Keeping things fresh takes work, because this, like the underlying data from the city actually comes out 3 times a year. Actually, I think 3 times a year. So yeah, you need to kind of keep things fresh, and like you said, keep projects in that, you know, may fall off, but like we should still keep a record of them to know, you know, what was happening in prior budget cycles. So there's lots to go on. It's very nuanced and very complex, but you know, this is a start. And I think, you know, this last bullet point basically means, you know, it may not be us or me that finishes this. So do everything as openly as possible, so that if we all get consumed with other projects or lose interest or whatever, you know, everything's out in the open, so somebody can pick up and move with it, which is, you know, one of the tenets of open data that I think would help keep things along. Open data and open source. So that's where we are. Thank you all for participating tonight and contributing to the data set, and for listening to us gab and show some of our products. And yeah, really appreciate your time, and you know, thanks for your interest tonight.
Hang on the slide just for a minute, because I want to give people a chance to take a look at those links. Can you share that last slide? Yep, we will be sending a PDF of this presentation to everybody whose email address we have. So if you didn't RSVP but found the link because you trolled Twitter and were planning to Zoom bomb us or whatever, you can DM me, and I will take your email address and make sure you get it. Otherwise, we'll be this has been recorded and will be shared by the Beta NYC folks, or Open Data Week Beta NYC folks. So you'll have a chance to see it there. And then I just wanted to also close by saying this is our company's favorite week of the year, especially being an open data company in New York City. We love participating, and we're so grateful for you guys doing another Zoom meeting, a voluntary Zoom meeting that you totally didn't need to do. Thanks in particular to Lala and Caitlin, who helped share resources throughout the course of the conversation with people who had asked questions. Really grateful for you. And we very much are looking forward to doing this in person with you guys in future Open Data Week events. We would love to stay in touch with you. This is a community built and open source project, so the work on this can continue in the open, both through code or data or Googling, whatever your skill levels provide. And if you've got connections to people who might be interested in this, please feel free to reach out to me. I dropped my email in the chat. We'd be happy to, you know, partner with people who are interested in this kind of stuff. The data is free, the code and stuff is all out there. So this can now be, you know, belong to the community. Thank you guys again so much again for giving us an hour and a half of your time, and we'll talk to you next year or offline.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your